Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 9th, 2020 Board of Education meeting for Union County Public Schools. I want to thank everyone for their patience. We had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we are ready to begin. We will start with an invocation from Reverend Vic Weaver.
Father God, we thank you, first of all, that we are in another year, that you have given us the opportunity to serve our community in capacities that range from board members to staff to law enforcement to our EMTs. Father, we are in a tremendous part of the country right now, and we are seeing you do great things in our midst, and we just ask now that you would bless this Board of Education in Union County, that you would just give them the strength, the mental capacity, the strongness, the earnestness that they need to lead our community in the school system. And Father, we are going to thank you for everything that you're doing and everything that you're going to do. And we just ask this now in Jesus' name. Amen.
If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Alex Fox here to do that for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Alex, I want to give you this. Okay. Board, we need approval of the agenda.
We have a couple changes to the agenda. Under consent, 5B, personnel strike and addendum. Under K, the 2020-2021 high school program of studies, can we add after that pending further discussion with Dr. Houlihan when he returns? And I would like to add another item to it, so that would be M, the interlocal agreement with the Board of County Commissioners with respect to the Cuthbertson land, pending final legal review.
Perfect. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I'd like to add an item at location of your pleasure on the item entitled Water and Sewer County Rate Increase. If you'd like to make that 6A after Superintendent's report or at the very end.
We will do that after the superintendent's report.
Wouldn't that be a comment item?
No, ma'am. Possible action if the board so concurs.
Okay. We will do that. And water sewer. After the superintendent's report, so after 6, before 7. Okay. Anything else, board? Okay, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
No.
We have, okay, all those opposed? Okay, so that is 8-1. Very good. Board members, if you would please walk around, we are going to have the John H. Crowder Service Award with Candace Sturdivant. And then the Influencers Award and special recognitions. You got it right? You have your hair right? One more time. All right. The late John H. Crowder spent more than 30 years serving the children in Union County. As a living tribute to him and his legacy, the Union County Board of Education awards the John H. Crowder Service Award every month to an outstanding high school student who is making a difference in their school and community. Students who receive this award are not only academically successful, but also have an established history of community service. Tonight, we award the John H. Crowder Service Award to a very special student from Marvin Ridge High School. Shabuka Unoha. Did I tried. Can you give it a go? I'll let you say your name.
Shebuka Anoha.
Will you please come forward? Shabuka, I'm sorry, is not only a great honor student, but he is also an outstanding leader, both in his school and in the community. At Marvin Ridge High, he currently serves as president of the African American History Club. Under his leadership, which looks amazing on your resume, his club has grown to be a vibrant student organization with members who regularly participate in service opportunities and promote African American history throughout the school community. He is also a senior youth member of the Association of Nigerian Physicians in America. In this role, he leads youth volunteers and also participates in conferences and presentations. Additionally, he's a youth member of Ubodako. I give this to you.
Oboduku.
Thank you. Union of North America, in which he is an active volunteer, writer, and presenter. In his spare time, he also volunteered with several other community organizations, including Elevation Outreach, St. Matthew's Catholic Church, Boy Scouts, and the Heart Bright Foundation. After graduating this June, he plans to attend college and study biology. He epitomizes leadership both at school and his community and the Board of Education. We are very, very proud to recognize him as the January recipient of the John H. Crowder Service Award.
Good evening. Union County Public Schools is home to more than 5,000 employees who go the extra mile each and every day. To celebrate their passion and dedication, we launched our newly revamped employee recognition program, UCPS Influencers, in December 2019. Through the UCPS Influencer program, our staff members, students, and community now have the opportunity to nominate a UCPS employee who goes above and beyond to positively impact the lives of others. Each month, a cross-departmental panel reviews the nominations and selects one certified and one non-certified UCPS influencer. We are pleased to say that now, only 2 weeks into December, we received over 100 nominations from our students, employees, community members, and parents. Tonight, I am honored to present the first two recipients of the UCPS Influencers Award, Health Science Academy at Monroe Middle teacher Ashley Rossman and Forest Hills High instructional assistant Marcus Clyburn. I'll now invite the nominators to come to the program podium to read their submissions and recognize their honorees' accomplishments. Ms. Raquel Costella.
Good evening. My name is Raquel Castella, and I'm both a UCPS employee and a Health and Science Academy at Monroe Middle parent. Ms. Rosman, will you please come forward? Thank you. Ms. Rosman has been an inspiration in my son's life. When my son experienced academic difficulties and began to lose confidence in his academic abilities, Ms. Rosman immediately stepped in and offered to tutor him in math. When she began to work with my son, her dedication and influence exceeded the limits. She raised my son's academic abilities like no one had ever done. In fact, he ended the school year with a high 4 on his EOG class. Thanks to Ms. Rosman, my son's self-esteem was raised and he has overcome barriers. Every day, my son has a purpose, and the purpose is to walk into Ms. Rosman's class and do his best. Not only for him, but to also show her how a caring, loving teacher can impact the life of a child. Believe it or not, my son now wants to be a math teacher one day, just to do what Ms. Rosman did for him. Pick someone up and raise them to the top. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ricky Gladden. I go to Forest Hills High School. I'm a student at Forest Hills High School. Mr. Clyburn, may you please come forward, please? Let's see. Let me get this out. Okay, here we go. Mr. Clyburn is one of my teachers. He is hard on me at times, but I know that's because he cares. Mr. Clyburn wants me to do well, not only at school, but also in life. He's a positive role model in my life. Let me see. And I want to thank him for all that he's done for me. I know that no matter what, he will be there to help me through anything. At the beginning of the year, Mr. Clyburn told the class about himself and his upbringing. His upbringing was similar to my life now. Now, I know the reason why he be so hard on me is because he believes that I will do better, and I will do great things in life. Thank you for being the greatest teacher, and I appreciate that.
I will now read the UCPS Influencers Proclamation from the Board of Education and Dr. Andrew Houlihan. Whereas the Union County Board of Education values the hard work of each employee within the district, whereas performance is an essential part of district operations, whereas Ashley Rossman and Marcus Clyburn exemplify the performance, dedication, and teamwork essential to the success of this district and its students. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Education for Union County Public Schools, and Dr. Andrew G. Houlihan, Superintendent, hereby proclaim Ashley Rossman and Marcus Clyburn as the UCPS influencers for the month of January 2020. Congratulations on this outstanding honor, and thank you for all you do to be a positive influence on others each and every day. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to ask Melanie Staten to come up. On April 15th, 2005, Melanie began her first or second tenure with Union County Public Schools. She's a bus driver, obviously. On the afternoon of December 17th, her dedication, attention to detail, professionalism, and leadership was put on display as she was the bus driver for Bus 30, which was a Benton Heights Elementary School bus that was involved in an accident on Sechrest Shortcut Road. An interesting note is Ms. Staten was not supposed to be the driver of that bus that afternoon. She filled in, as she does many times. There were 43 students on board, along with a few teachers and parent volunteers. It was a scene, an event, and an experience that none of us would like to have. In her own words, she said, and I didn't tell you I was going to use this, but I am. She said there was a ditch and a brick wall next to the road, and I didn't want the bus to turn over. So it took all I had to keep the bus on the road. She said it was quite a workout. Surely nervous, dazed, and sore, Ms. Staten's training and commitment to her students took over. When I arrived at the scene, amidst all of the chaos, the students were safe and secure, and we gave each other a big hug. After what had just happened minutes before, she was still doing her job, sharing information, looking after the students, talking with law enforcement officials, and being a leader. Tonight, we're asking the board to recognize her for outstanding leadership during this event and to thank her for her dedicated service and commitment to our students. She is the kind of person that makes us Team UCPS. Thank you. Will, would you like to come on up? So before I go through what I have to say to Will, I'd like you all to notice the green tie I'm wearing tonight. The next 3 recognitions that we have are for Weddington High School. So I told the AD, Mike Hart, that I would wear green in honor of them. Tonight, I'm pleased to recognize Weddington High School senior Will Shipley, who was recently named the 2019 North Carolina Gatorade High School Football Player of the Year. This award not only recognizes Will's outstanding performance on the field, but also celebrates his high standards of academic achievement and character. In addition to having a 4.0 GPA, Will volunteers locally on behalf of homeless shelters and youth sports programs. Will is now a finalist for the National Gatorade Player of the Year. Congratulations, Will. I'll go through the line. They'll get you. Okay, as we continue the Weddington theme tonight, now we'd like to recognize our outstanding student athletes who recently won state championships. I'd like to ask Coach McDuffie, would you please come forward to recognize your champions? Coach McDuffie, come on.
Hey everyone, I am Coach Angie McDuffie, and Coach Jennifer Ford is here with me tonight. And we are thrilled to be here and to be honored in this kind of way by the Board of Education. I just quickly want to say, because I know they want me to keep to the script, but I have to take a moment to say that we feel like we are the luckiest women in the world to be able to coach these talented, smart female athletes that after 10 years of not competing at Weddington High School, we were able to go in and take the state championship in our division. And not only that, we took second place overall for the whole day out of 133 teams across every division, across every size school. And to me, that is a testament to these parents sitting right here, to these girls, to my fellow coaches, to our principal, to our administration, and most importantly, to our athletic director, Mike Hart, who actually threw down the challenge to Coach Jen and I last spring, saying that he wanted to have another banner and cheerleading could go get a state championship. And he threw down that challenge and we took it. And within just a few months of training, and hard training at that, I know they would agree, we absolutely rose up and did it. And I want to congratulate each of these girls. And when I call out your name, please come forward to be recognized. Olivia Andrew. Emma Arant. Haley Baldwin. Senior Abby Bernard. Senior Macy Colson. Emma Haley. Kelsey Haynes. Lauren Hussein. Megan Klingerman. Karis McGee, Senior. Sydney Rogers. Julia Samuels, Senior. Amanda Seltzer. Catherine Sutton. Hallie Thigpen. Carly Totaro. Leah Safrikas. Maddie Weissert, Senior. Carly Wilton. Madeline Wise. JD Zeiss. And Coach Jennifer Ford.
Good? You ready? I'm just going to call your name.
Wait.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Andy Capone, and I'm the head coach at Weddington High School for the football team. Tonight, I am pleased to present the Weddington High football team, who recently won the 3AA state championship and finished with an overall record of 16-0, the second undefeated season in Union County history and first in Weddington school history. Athletes, as I call your name, please come forward to be recognized. Alec Mock, Malik Mustafa, Ian Williams, Jalen Newman, Trey Allsbrooks, Justin Muckelveen, Cambridge Tuttle, Corey Hennings, Ronnie Watterson, Cole Wiseman, Evan Schwartz, Landon Backey, Will Shipley, Zach Rita, Joey Macia, Kai Moosberger, Dante Cassiola, Austin Pronk, Riley Garden, James Easterling, Trey Gordon, Matthew Lehman, Kyle Parsons, Grady Brosterhouse, Matthew Moonen, Knox Willingham, DJ Chow, Jackson McLean. How many more I got? Chadwick Jedi, and Chris Morales. Thank you all very much.
Dr. Breelove, Board of Education, that concludes our recognitions for tonight.
That brings us to public comments. 30 minutes has been allotted for public comments. Community members wishing to speak during public comments should state their name, address, and phone number prior to making other comments. The board will not hear in open session complaints about the performance of school personnel, personnel issues, or confidential student issues. Individuals may address the board for 3 minutes. Any person who is an appointed representative for a group may address the board for 5 minutes. Should a community member wish to seek information or share items that may not be shared during public comments, our staff are available to address your concerns or provide information. Dr. Chris Barnes, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Dr. Brad Breedlove, Chief Academic Officer, and Jared McCraw, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, are here to assist. The first person we have is Ginger Wall.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Ginger Wally, and I'm Executive Director of an organization called Heart for Monroe. And I first want to just thank you for allowing us just to come and share a little bit about Heart for Monroe and our new program, Chalk It Up to Love East, which is part of our overall Chalk It Up to Love program. I also want to say a special thank you to Board Member Gary Sides for inviting us tonight just to share a little bit more about this and inquire about how we can continue to support our teachers in our Title I schools. For those of you who, oh, well, there you go. Not that there's that many people left and the football team is gone, so certainly you can hear me now. Okay. For those of you who are not familiar with Heart for Monroe, we are a nonprofit organization started about 5.5 years ago. We have a collaboration of over 120 churches, nonprofits, ministries, businesses, individuals, and families who have come together for 4 main reasons. That is to address homelessness and hunger, and education, and build relationships, most importantly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Hartford Monroe. I'm going to talk a little bit about education and then invite someone else to talk about Chalk It Up to Love. But for us, education is so monumentally important. It touches every area of what we believe in. We can't address homelessness and hunger without talking about education and building relationships. And because of that, we started programs in our Title I schools. Currently, we have 9 Title I schools that we serve. We have reading buddy programs that are going on. So much like Read With You, we work in collaboration with that. We believe in literacy in the elementary schools. We have mentoring programs that are going on right now in our elementary schools and our middle schools and also in high schools. Currently, we have over 350 students that are being mentored each week by community members, by Wingate University students, and leaders that come in and help to build confidence, teach them real life skills, and quite honestly, the influencers that we all witnessed here tonight, it's all about that, and it's about how we can build relationships with them and build their self-esteem. In addition to those programs, we also have Chalk It Up to Love, and then we do events. Hartford Monroe is so committed to our Union County Public School families and our students that all of our events circle around how we can encourage and help our students. So we have a 5K race that happens in March where Title I students are sponsored to run in that. And we get community mentors to come in and they're running buddies with them. We get Wingate University athletes and athletes like you just saw from Weddington High School and all over our county to come and spend time with those students and cheer them on and run with them to the finish line. We have a prom dress event where girls can come in from juniors and seniors in our high school and select their perfect prom dress. We have a free sports camp in the summertime, a fall festival event where we have 2,000 people come out, weather permitting. And then we were blessed enough this Christmas to have over 400 students and families that were adopted through Hartford Monroe that were provided Christmas. And currently we're working with Wingate University to start doing health fairs and combine our clothing closet with that and provide food too. And just in November, we had our first one at Monroe Middle School, and we had over 800 people come out to that event. We have another one scheduled in January, February, March, and April of this year because we believe in addressing not only education, but the health and wellness of our families and our students, providing clothing that is absolutely necessary and supporting our counselors and our teachers so that they're not having to worry about that. They can worry about focusing on their job. All of that being said about Hartford Monroe, the real reason we're here tonight is to talk about Chalk It Up to Love, to talk about how we can support teachers like what we have seen here tonight that are in our Title I schools that are having to supply much needed school supplies for these students who can't provide them on their own. How can we do that? And so in order to tell you a little bit more about Chalk It Up to Love, I'm going to introduce Isabella Wally, who is a student at Wingate University, and she's going to share a little bit more about this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Izzy Wally, and I'm a student at Wingate University. I am the student manager for Chalk It Up to Love East, and I've been given this amazing opportunity to move Chalk It Up to Love Central and expand it to the eastern part of the county. So now we have East as well. And we serve 11 Title I schools in the areas that we serve in. And in the past 4 months, we have served over 400 teachers. And what we do, for those of you who may not know, we collect school supplies and then we distribute them to Title I teachers so they don't have to pay out of pocket for anything, because that is a phenomenon that happens quite frequently in these Title I schools, and not just Title I schools. It's something that's rampant. And so we really work to support these teachers because you saw here tonight the impact that these teachers have on lives. I mean, those were 2 teachers. So if we can support them and allow teachers to do their best, then we can ensure that we can keep seeing stories like that. Over the past 4 months, we served 400 teachers, and we also provided 3,500 books for their classroom libraries. And so the way this works is every month we send out an order form online to the teachers. They fill it out, and then we can fill the order to the best of our capabilities based on the donations that we receive. We also take monetary donations, and we purchase school supplies when needed if our inventory is low. So we kind of supplement where needed. And then on our distribution days, we get to see the teachers face to face, and we just get to love on them. We carry their orders to their cars. We provide light refreshments, and we just get to spend time with them, and that's the fun day because you get to see how happy they are. And there's just so much gratitude. And when, just before I came in here, I was reading responses to our latest order form because we leave a little section for like special requests, which we fill out pretty often. And they can also like leave a comment. And so many of them were saying thank you. They're expressing their gratitude. Every month we see these messages where it's just like, you don't know how much this means to me in my classroom, what you guys do for us on the, every month. So that's Chalk It Up to Love in a nutshell. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask a question? Where's the
Yes.
collection sites? And if somebody wants to give money, what's the way that they can do that?
So our collection sites are Central United Methodist Church in Central Monroe and Wingate Baptist Church in the Wingate area. 11, I said that. And if you want to make out monetary donations, who do you make that out to?
Hartford Monroe. We're a nonprofit, so 501c3. Every bit of the money that comes into Hartford Monroe, if it's earmarked, it goes out for a program. But 100% of every dime that goes in goes right back out into our community. It's all volunteer based. There's no overhead. Everything goes back out into our community, support our community.
Are donors able to give online on your website?
Yes, they are.
And your website address is?
HartfordMonroe.com.
Good to go. Thank you for your
so
time.
much for your time. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes public comments. We now need the approval of the December 3rd minutes.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we will move to the amended consent agenda.
I move that we approve the amended consent agenda.
Second.
And I just want to reiterate that we want to speak with Dr. Houlihan once he is better regarding K, the 2020-2021 high school program of studies, because we do want to touch base with staff on a couple of questions that we have. But we know you're eager to get that off to printing, but we do want to have a conversation.
And then the interlocal agreements pending final legal review as well.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. And I will turn it over to Mr. Sides to discuss water and sewer.
I thought it's after superintendent.
Oh, okay. We will turn it over to Dr. Breedlove, who is sitting in for Dr. Houlihan tonight.
Well, thank you. I guess I have mixed emotions on this for sure. And first of all, I want to wish Dr. Houlihan a speedy recovery and just let him know that we're thinking about him as he's out. And so on a lighter note, though, Happy New Year to everyone and welcome back. Can't believe it's already January the 10th and the school year is moving very quickly. Tomorrow, obviously, is the last day, especially if you look at our secondary schools and our high schools, the last day for review. And the following week, we get into final exams. So it's a busy couple of weeks. You don't just have a little glide path into coming back from the break. We hit the ground running right away. So that's something that we are accustomed to. And as parents, I know that they're feeling that, and the students are definitely feeling that as well. But I want to encourage everyone to stay focused, get plenty of sleep, rest, study hard, and ask that our students show up on time to school as we begin tests. All of those things that our principals are reiterating out there as well. As everyone knows, we spend a lot of time and energy and support to improving school safety across the board, and we have done that for a number of years now. And this year in particular, we have invested heavily, thanks to the school board, thanks to our county, in our safety, whether that is physical safety of our buildings and infrastructure, or mental health safety of our students, counselors, therapists, and that we have done. And on that note, right before break, Union County Public Schools received a North Carolina safety grant worth $300,000. This grant will be used to help expand strategies to help keep our schools, students safe, faculty and staff safe as well. We will use the funds for school resource officers, services for students in crisis, school safety training, safety equipment in our schools, and additional mental health support personnel. We are very thankful for this grant and are looking forward to utilizing these additional resources. On that note as well, today is National Law Enforcement Day, and I want to take a moment on behalf of our superintendent and school system to thank and honor our partners in law enforcement. Obviously, we have representatives here, the men and women who serve to work each day to keep our entire school system safe, and our students, our staff, our community as they enter our schools. There's that presence, and we are very grateful and thankful for them in our building. And on top of that, just want to show our appreciation for the leadership of the Union County Sheriff's Department, as well as the Monroe Police Department, as well as all the municipalities in law enforcement and what they do to support us each and every day. So our hats off to those individuals, and thank you for what you do. In addition, also today, or this month, is the National School Board Appreciation Month. And January is the School Board Appreciation Month, and I want to give a huge shout out to our very own Union County Public Schools Board of Education. And our team is very appreciative for what you do, your time commitment. Our community probably doesn't know how much time and effort we spend communicating with as staff, as school system, communicating with you about day-to-day, weekly, monthly, the number of times that we spend and the hours that we spend with you, and want to say thank you for your time and effort to help make us a great school system. The resources and that you have helped provide us, we can't do it without you, and we need that in a number of ways. Number one, just that thought partner as we make plans for the future of Union County Public Schools and how we're going to continue to grow and be successful, as well as at times pushback as well on, well, how do we educate students, and are we improving what we are doing? So on behalf of our entire school system, thank you all very much for what you do and each and every day. It's greatly appreciated. If you all would, can you please give them a round of applause? And so on behalf of Dr. Houlihan, that is the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. So now we will turn it over to Mr. Sides.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you may well be aware, the county sewer and water rates are increasing. First year's increase is going into effect, and next year there is also an increase proposed. We are, I know Dr. Houlihan is working with county staff to make arrangements for our shortfall from our budget for utility costs. And I would like to propose to give staff some additional direction in these discussions with the county. And since we have some future joint meetings scheduled with the county commissioners, I thought this would be very timely, time sensitive to get the ball rolling. I would like to direct staff to enter into negotiations with the county manager, and appropriate county staff to develop a long-range water and sewer contract with a fixed rate. I understand that UCPS is the second largest consumer of water and sewer in the county, and I think it only appropriate, since funding of some of our operating funds does come directly from the county. It makes no sense. We're just going in round and round chasing our tail. We pay the increase. The county has to pay us to pay them for the increase. So why don't we just come to a contractual arrangement that this is what it's going to be over as long a period of time as appropriate. And I just think I would like to offer a motion for discussion to direct staff to enter in negotiations with the county. And hopefully that will come to some type of contractual agreement that can be entertained by the appropriate committees and then the entire board. And that's a purpose for the request to add this to the agenda. I'd like to offer that motion.
Are you offering a motion to send it to a committee to put on an agenda?
No, I'm making a motion to direct staff to.
This is a committee deal.
Well, I think it's time sensitive.
It has to go to finance committee.
Well,
it hasn't even
when
gone
we
into
have
effect.
a contract.
February 1, it goes into effect.
Okay, so let's start negotiating
So
with the
let's
county.
put it on
about-
the agenda at the finance committee at the 23rd.
I think it's
Or,
only
sorry, 20.
appropriate. If that's the pleasure of the majority of the board, that's fine, but I think this is time sensitive. And all I'm asking is to direct staff to enter into discussions with the county to come up with some type of, hopefully, some type of agreement that can be discussed, and if approved by the appropriate committee, and then the full board.
I think that most of our things go through, not most, if not all our items go through committee before they come to the board. So I don't think this is a proper motion to make. It should go to finance first.
And since it didn't come out of committee, we would need a second. So we have a motion. I will wait to see if you receive a second. Then we can discuss it. But that would be required since it did not come from committee. So we have a motion on the floor. Okay. So Mr. Size, the motion fails. Thank you very much for, bringing that to the attention, of anyone listening, everyone here.
Would you like it to be added to the finance committee meeting agenda on the 28th?
28th, I would like to add that request that be added to the agenda.
So that's the finance meeting on January 28th.
Correct, at 8:15 in the morning.
8:15, okay. And and we're going to add to that the water and sewer increase. So just so that everyone is clear.
We did talk about the water and sewer increase at our last finance committee meeting and how much the cost was going to be for the remainder of this fiscal year and for next fiscal year as well.
Well, I would say my initial response would be positive, but I think we need to look at that and see, is that going to be a benefit or is it not going to be a benefit? Because we've not seen any numbers either way on that. So I agree with that. Let's look at the committee and go from there.
Well, I think we all agree we're going to have an increase.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to ask the county for additional funding to pay for the increase in sewer and water rates for the remainder of this fiscal year and for next fiscal year. And I think it's appropriate, and again, we can get this in the committee, but I think instead of Peter paying Paul, why don't we just have a contract as close to cost if we can get it, and as long a term as we can get it, and let's just say this is going to be it, because I resist having to increase our budget to ask the county to fund something like that, where it just turns around and goes right back to them. Comes from them, comes to us, and turn around, goes out the spout to them. So that was my thought process, to get staffs talking about the option to put something together as a contract that we could consider. So I guess we'll wait until the end of January to do that.
And I don't have any problem discussing that concept. I just think it should go to the finance committee first.
I agree. And just so that the full board is aware, we have been working with Dr. Houlihan and Shauna, and we do have projections and numbers, because when the first 15.5% increase takes effect next month, February. So in our current budget from February to June 30, we do know what that projected overage, could be that we did not receive in this year's budget. So there are numbers and we do have projections. It's just we don't know what kind of winter we're going to have. And we're just waiting to see if our numbers are going to, wash out or not. But there have been discussions that if we have a typical winter like we normally do, we do have an idea of what that difference is going to be from February to June 30 to get us through this year's budget. And then the next 15.5% is going to take effect 12 months from now, next January. So we will work with the Finance Committee again to, estimate what that utility cost will have to, be worked into next year's budget. So I think there was a comment earlier that we haven't seen numbers, don't know numbers. So I just want to be clear, we know the numbers. And we are working on that. But if you're not on the Finance Committee, I would just encourage everyone, to please, follow along and help Mrs. Hintel and the rest of the board who's working through that with our CFO.
I don't recall, have we gamed out what the next fiscal year? I know we talked about the 240,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year.
No, it's about 60 some. It's about 60,000 something dollars for the remainder of this fiscal year,
Right.
which ends June 30th. So 5 additional months. If you start with the increase on February 1st, next fiscal year, it would be $240,000 at a run rate, just using what we typically spend on water and sewer.
240,000 an additional for the next fiscal year, the including the new,
Yes.
the second rate increase, which will hit in 2021.
Yes. So half of the year half of next fiscal year is with just the 15.5. And then it compounds at January 1 with the second 15.5 increase.
Okay, if there's no more comments, we will, again, this was discussed at the last Finance Committee. We will honor your request and take it back to Finance at the January 28th meeting. Okay, next we have the CAFR audit report for 2019, and I will turn it over to Shauna McClam.
Good evening, Board. Our 2019 audit has been completed, and we have Adam Shapirik from Anderson, Smith & White. They do our external audit, and he's here to present to you our 2019 audit.
Good evening. Happy New Year. You should have been presented a file that contained the comprehensive annual financial report, all 110 pages of it. And while every page is important, there are some pages that are more important than others. And I wanted to point out a couple of those pages and a couple of those items. I'm probably going to take a little bit more time this year as opposed to previous years, given circumstances in other districts that are often compared to your district as far as size goes and economy goes. And also to point out some trends. So the audit is really important to provide information to let you know that the numbers are accurate, not necessarily whether they're good or bad. We don't question the decisions of management or the board as long as they, maintain, within budgets and aren't ridiculously out of expectations. But sometimes that information becomes useful, and when our teams do 12 to 15 audits of school systems every year, we see other trends and can compare you and give you good information that is more than just, yes, the statements are accurate. We can actually go into, this is what we see, this is where we see you're heading, these are some pitfalls you can avoid. And so that's kind of what I'm going to try to go through a little bit tonight. So you also would have been provided a 3-page letter. So the board actually hires us to perform the audit of management. And so we issue a 3-page letter to you to let you know that the audit went as planned. We didn't have any difficulties dealing with management. There were no disagreements, no uncorrected misstatements, no differences outside of these statements that we thought needed to be presented in going over how the audit went. So again, that's a form letter. That letter will change next year. We have a new GASB being implemented that's going to change the look of these statements. Over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a significant change in the net position calculation. Net position is very important to accountants. It's not important to the board. When you manage the school system, you manage the funds, you actually look at fund balance. I would equate fund balance to be the amount of money you have personally in your checking account. Your net position is your net worth, counting all your debt, all your houses, all your cars, and then on top of that, adding the cost of having children. And then on top of that, adding the cost of having 40,000 children. And that's what your net position is. It's a giant negative number. You have liabilities on your books for retirement expenditures that are to be paid by the state, not even to be paid by you. But because they are related to employees and former employees of this school system, they are actually on your books as a liability when calculating net position. And so your negative net position is very difficult to pin down and even look at to determine whether you've had a good year or a bad year, because that net position could fluctuate by tens of millions of dollars just because an actuary decided that the next 5 years healthcare cost is going to go up 5% rather than 6%. And so that net position number, again, very important to accountants. It represents the first 2 exhibits in the financial statements. Exhibits 1 and 2 are a balance sheet and income statement all centered around net position. But the more important numbers are the fund balance numbers. That is where the budget is written. That is where fund balance is appropriated. And those are exhibits 3 and 4. So again, I'm going to be skipping around, but if you would turn or scroll to page 13, that's exhibit 3. This is your balance sheet for those governmental funds, your general fund, your state public school fund, your federal grants fund, your other special revenue, capital outlay, and your individual schools. Those are your main governmental funds. You have 2 business type funds, child nutrition and child care. But on exhibit 3, page 13, the first number I wanted to point out was your general fund balance of $1,373,000. That is a decrease of $4.7 million from the previous year. You had fund balance of $6.1 million, almost $6.2 million, but much of that was transferred to capital outlay in the current year. So your statements this year, if you think of them as a puzzle, normally your puzzle is a 500-piece puzzle. This year you got a 1,000-piece puzzle. You've new debt issued for computers. You got a transfer from general fund to capital outlay fund, and you also have a unassigned fund balance that is nearly zero. So when you look at that $1.3 million of fund balance, it's separated into 2 pieces. A restricted piece of $1.2 million that represents amounts to cover the receivables that you've yet to receive and your encumbrances. With a $400 million budget, $40 million a month, even though a lot of that is salaries, you can't just cut off your purchase orders for 2 weeks at the end of the year, let them all lapse, and then issue new ones come July 1. So you actually carry over purchase orders. You have expenditures that are out there in the world that you are going to have as vendors provide services or provide items. And so those encumbrances actually have to restrict fund balance. So while you have $1.3 million of fund balance, you need nearly $1.2 million of fund balance just to carry over into the next year to make sure you always have fund balance available for your open purchase order, your encumbrances. Having encumbrances over your fund balance would create a negative unassigned fund balance. That is not technically a financial finding, but it's not recommended. So when you look at kind of where you sit fund balance in your general fund, to me, you're probably about as low as you want to go, given that every year your encumbrances are about $1.2 million or $1 million. Then you have a couple $10,000, $30,000 of receivables. So again, that exhibit 3, that first column, that's a very important column and very different than what you would see in previous years. And that's because, again, about $4.6 million was transferred over to capital outlay to help fund some projects and some computer leases.
In your opinion, do most school districts in the state of North Carolina have a larger fund balance? Is there a percentage or an amount so if we have a $440 million budget, is there a percentage of that we should hold in fund balance?
That comes up all the time, and it's difficult to answer because a lot of your funding comes from the state where you have no fund balance. And so the number 7% is thrown around as a comfortable, healthy fund balance. The question then becomes, do we look at 7% of $400 million?
Right.
No. Do you look at 7% of
local,
the $100 million there?
Whatever million. Uh-huh.
That's actually would probably be kind of low because decisions that happen at the state and federal level affect your state and federal expenditures, but those expenditures aren't always fully funded. And so your 7% has to cover the 7% of the 100 million, but it also probably has to cover a couple of percents on the state and federal side because in politics today, and in a state like this, a purple state, politicians, local and state level, want to convince everybody that everybody got a pay raise and your taxes are lower. And so there is difficulties in managing those budgets when you're talking about changing your funding sources, whether you have low wealth or not anymore. That's a giant pot of money that can go away. Your positions that they're going to cover, whether your ADM meets targets, if you're 50 students shy of the next tier, you might not get the funding that you were planning on, and therefore it has to come out of local. So 7% number, it's not going to be 7% of $400 million. It's not even going to be 7% of the local and state funds, but it needs to be at least 7% of your local funds,
which would be $7 million.
$7 million, which is where you were for a while.
We were for a while, but in the last couple of years, we haven't been there.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the general fund years ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago, used to be made up of both the general fund and the other special revenue fund, your Fund 8. When charter schools started becoming popular, the statutes were changed, allowing the creation of this Fund 8, this other special revenue funds. The statutes listed what revenues could be moved over there because one of your revenues in your general fund was indirect cost collected from your own child nutrition fund. So should a charter school get a percentage of the money you paid for yourself from child nutrition to general? Absolutely not. That makes no sense. So expenditures that the charter schools don't really have a title to got moved over to Fund 8. And a lot of those were federal and state programs like Medicaid NC Pre-K, any other grant you got, tobacco grants, all these grants, those are over there in Fund 8. But there's also some revenues over there in Fund 8 that are not really restricted. So when we look at fund balance, and I think this has come up over a couple of years, various board members, and also come up with, you've had 3 finance officers over the last 5 years. Communication levels were different by each one of those. But the financial statements still communicated the same information. It's just very nuanced when you're talking about restricted funds versus assigned funds. Assignments can be made by management or by the board. I can go to the grocery store planning on spending $20 on hamburgers, but if I get there and I change my mind, that $20 gets reassigned. That's all assigning is. We plan on spending $1 million of our fund balance sometime in the next year or two on training, or sometime in the next year or two on technology. That's all it takes to assign. And by virtue of that, any board member can say, no, we're not assigning that. And that's where that assignment really, it hides whether it's restricted or not, whether it can be used or not. And so that's a very nuanced terminology.
And I appreciate that discussion. I think that it's important for anybody who's watching this. We didn't take our fund balance down to where it is because that was something that we wanted to do. The county required us to take our fund balance down to where it is. And last year they asked that we use the fund balance that we had at the unassigned fund balance for capital projects.
Yep. And so again,
Sean, is that correct? Yeah.
We've kind of got on a tangent with that, but back to the combining those two. If you really looked at those combined, you really can get a good idea of where you do have some fund balance. So again, the other special revenue fund and the general fund used to be combined. The other special revenue, you can only have one general fund. That means you can only have one unassigned fund balance. By virtue of $1 being in that other special revenue fund, it's automatically assigned because you put it in that fund. And that takes no decision. That just takes, that's law. If our indirect cost goes into that fund, it's assigned. And so that indirect cost is to be used to pay increases in utilities, indirect cost, the cost of child nutrition benefiting from having an HR department and a finance department. So that indirect cost revenue goes into Fund 8 and generates some fund balance. So I don't know if everybody has it in front of them, that other special revenue fund, Exhibit 3, actually has $7.3 million of fund balance. That fund has had between $6 and $10 million of fund balance for the last 5-6 years. But when you look at what that fund balance is made up of, $2.2 million is actually restricted for programs like Medicaid. Medicaid's paid for on a reimbursement basis. You provide a service, and maybe 3 years down the road, you'll get paid for it. So you're always going to have some fund balance on hand from Medicaid. You're just not going to be able to spend the money as fast as it comes in. So when I look back over the years, that $2.2 million, that is very consistent. You've always had $2 million that is truly restricted because of grants. Now that will fluctuate. If you receive front-loaded grants, you're currently receiving a very large grant, but it's on a reimbursement basis so that it doesn't create fund balance that has to be restricted. But certain grants can be. You can get $1 million grant, only spend half of it, and then you have $500,000 left as restricted. And those restrictions are restrictions by third parties, not by management, not by the board. And so that's, again, back to that nuance of assigned versus restricted. So you have $2.2 million restricted by third parties. You also have $2.2 million restricted because of state law related to receivables. So at the end of the year, you determine how much indirect cost you're actually going to collect from yourself. And so that number is $1.3 million this year. That is, again, money that you will be collecting from yourself But in that one fund, in that restricted fund or that other special revenue fund, it's restricted because that money hasn't been put in the bank yet. So it gets paid after year end and it becomes part of the next year's budget, but it still is restricted by state statute. So you do have $2.2 million of restricted funds that the only restriction on it is that you got to collect it, which is collected 100% because it's collected from yourself. So that money will eventually be available for appropriating, but the timing of it is always delayed by a year. One of the things you can do in managing that is determine how much indirect cost needs to be paid before the end of the year and actually pay it before the end of the year. That's just a little accounting trick that would change that restricted number down into a different category. But again, that can be difficult. There's a lot going on June 30th where your child nutrition and child care funds are going to end up. May not always be determined right at year end, but that is one thing you could do to reduce that number. And that leaves $2.8 million that is assigned only because it's in that fund. So if you really look at your available fund balance, we're looking at $165,000 in general, which is basically zero, and then $2.2 million that is restricted just because of cash flow timing, and $2.8 million that is their fund balance created by indirect cost, by fees that you collect, by other services. You rent out gyms, that money goes in there. So there is fund balance available, but it's about equal to what you spent this year in fund balance. So again, I bring up all of this because you're often compared to other districts in your size, and I don't want any of you ending up on courthouse steps, upset about the financial condition. So you're at a point where you do have time to reduce fund balance spending, but it's a lot of tough decisions to get there, and it's a slow turnaround. A lot of this is all salary based. There is a huge press for EC services, services that are non-teaching positions that are great services but cost money. We're in a good economy. The same speech person or hearing contracted person, even the same driver, they're not going to cost the same that they did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So there's a lot of difficult decisions to go from using $4 million of fund balance to using $0 of fund balance. And you're in that position now. And that's where, again, we're talking 1,000-piece puzzle. Some of that is county funding. County, $300,000 of county water rates becomes a big deal when you have $0. So again, all of these are part of the decisions and the road forward to get to zero usage of fund balance, which is where, I think you really would want to be, given knowing that you want to be at the 7%. You want $7 million, and I'm telling you, you've got $5 really in that, and it's all in that other special revenue fund. So, are there any questions about any of the relationships there? Again, you had $4 million of funds that were moved over to capital outlay. Most of those funds are still there. So there is another avenue of cost savings in the capital outlay fund that might allow for transferring money back. But again, that's, there's a lot more decisions in relation to that. That is not part of this year's audit, but there is $5 million of fund balance over in capital outlay. A large part of that being the $4.6 million that was transferred this year. All right. One of the other aspects, again, you're unique this year. You have a few things going on. You actually purchased some investments this year, right at year end. I would just warn that with tightening cash flow and true investments more than just money markets or stiff, that you'll have to monitor your cash flow differently because there is some timing delays on when investments are available for cash. It's great to use investments to make idle cash, make a little bit of money for you, but it does enhance the need to monitor cash differently. A lot of your general fund, other special revenue, capital outlay, chunk, they all share one bank account. Their book balances are tracked, but it's all the cash is in one place. So that cash balance has been drastically reduced and put into investment accounts. So again, it just adds a layer of analysis and timing and planning as far as cash flow goes, as far as monitoring when to move investments back into cash. So again, that's just, again, something going forward I wanted to point out. It does show up a little bit more in the business type funds where we actually provide a cash flow statement. So any questions there? All right. Exhibit 4 is the income statement for the governmental funds. Actually, let me go back and just say your total cash on hand for all your governmental funds is $5 million and total investments are $19 million. So that's, again, that's why I'm bringing up those investments. It's a huge part of your actual cash. So anyway, back to the income statement, Exhibit 4, page 15. The change in fund balance for the general fund, $4.8 million. Your individual schools, they have $4 million in the bank. Their fund balance actually decreased $400,000. Your other special revenue fund used $2.6 million of fund balance. And that's where I got the, when I said you have basically 1 year left. When you look at the decrease in fund balance in the general fund and the decrease in fund balance in the other special revenue fund, before that transfer, you'd use about $3.1 million of fund balance operationally from your governmental fund. So that's the number. I was saying it was 4, but it's actually 3.1. That's 400,000 of is the individual schools, the money that they have in their accounts. But for your general fund and other special revenue fund, $3.1 million is the real number used before that transfer. And then the capital outlay fund increased fund balance by $3.1 million. They had $4 million transferred in and also borrowed $8 million to pay for that giant laptop purchase. All right. That's it for the governmental funds. You also have 2 business type funds, your school food service fund and your after school program fund. On these 2 funds, fund balance actually meets net position and they're one and the same, unfortunately. The business type funds actually have to record that liability for retirement, that liability for pension. So it really clouds the water in analyzing fund balance on those 2 funds. So we look at cash. Well, now your cash also has another nuance in the fact that you've got investments in now. So cash went down by $5 million, but $4 million of that is because of investments. So when you look at exhibits 7, 8, and 9, a couple of things I wanted to point out. Exhibit 7, when you combine cash and investments, you've actually got $5.7 million in your school food service fund and $1.8 million in your after school program. One of the differences this year versus last year in the balance sheet, your indirect costs collected. Last year, you only paid $400,000. When I say last year, I mean 2018. You paid $400,000 of indirect cost from school food service to the Fund 8 and $500,000 from childcare. This year in 2019, you actually paid $800,000. So again, that is a revenue source collected from child nutrition that is not a necessarily permanent revenue source. At some point, when they run out of cash, you have to stop collecting indirect costs from them. Child care fund pretty much breaks even every year after paying that $500,000. So that really is more reoccurring. But on the child nutrition side, once you get below 1 month's operating cash and investments, you can no longer pay indirect costs because they don't want you to bleed that fund down to zero. They have to maintain 1 month's operating cash on hand. So that $800,000 is a revenue source this year. It helped you only use $3.1 million, but it is not a guaranteed $800,000 every year. All right. When you look at the cash flow statement, which is Exhibit 9, the decrease in cash was $5.3 million, which 4.8 of that was really due to investments, the purchase of investments. And then you had a positive effect of that $400,000 of indirect cost additional. Again, the timing of that cash goes out after year end. So there's an $800,000 liability that will get paid, or that's basically paid July 1st. So that $5.7 million at June 30th becomes $4.9 million on July 1st, the next day after you pay that indirect cost amount. So that has is again a nuance on when looking at cash flow as a indicator of financial health. Bottom line, it comes down to about $900,000 of real operational cash usage in the child nutrition fund. And so we can see that on the cash flow statement and all the way back on page 60. So this page 60 is a non-GAAP schedule, meaning GAAP doesn't like it, but it's very informative. It actually separates all of these non-operational expenditures, and sometimes these expenditures are actually revenues. Your net position can go up $1 million, but you can use $4 million of cash because of, again, those pension liabilities. So pages 60 and 61, they're non-GAAP schedules for the child nutrition fund, but they actually break out the fund balance usage before implementing changes related to pensions and fixed assets and depreciation and changes in accrued leave. And that comes down to, at the bottom of page 60, $930,000, basically operational loss. And then there's all of these reconciling items, and your net position changed by negative $400,000. So you see that $900,000 versus $400,000, the $900,000 is the more financially accurate number. So the rest of the first 70 pages is your footnotes. A lot of detail on your accounting policies, more detail on those pension plans, some information on your fixed assets and accumulated depreciation numbers, roll forwards of your debt. But when you actually go towards the back of the CAFR, you see the other part of our audit. We conduct a financial statement audit, but we also conduct a compliance audit. We make sure that your major state and federal funds, that those dollars are spent in accordance with those particular programs. This year, we audited child nutrition on the federal side and the state public school fund on the state side. State public school fund represents like 85-90% of your state funds. It has to be audited every year. So those two major funds, there's letters in the back, compliance letters, 2 letters, one for state, one for federal, and then one internal control letter, both clean opinion letters, and the internal control letter indicating no findings, no internal control deficiencies noted. So again, clean audits, clean opinions on that compliance section. That's all I have. Again, a little longer than normal, but trying to get some information out there that maybe doesn't always get heard the same way by people. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate Shauna's time. Again, the 110 pages, a lot goes into it. 300 hours of auditing, thousands and thousands of pieces of paper, invoices, pay stubs, reports provided by her staff. We take up the conference room outside of the IT closet for about 2 weeks a year. And we also head out to usually anywhere from 12 to 16 schools per year at the end of year to look over their records. So a lot of time goes into the actual work that goes behind these statements. It all went smoothly.
Is it listed somewhere on your report which schools you reviewed?
No, not in this report, but we do have that information. Like I said, we go to. It's
just a random sample.
It's a random sample, and it's a rotating sample. So it looks like, I think, every third year we're out to every school.
Third year.
Yeah. So, and at each of those schools, it's again, it ends up being hundreds of cash receipts and disbursements at your combined individual school level. We recognize that the individual school level is where most of your cash is, and it's very liquid, and it's if you lose or misplace $1,000 of cash at a local school level, it hits the papers just as hard as anything else. And so, our sample, we feel our time is overly represented in the individual school testing. It represents 5 days of work of testing at schools.
And you're just going back over the past fiscal year at the school level.
That's right.
So basically every school gets hopefully every school, every third year gets to look at that year.
Yeah. And then on top of that, we're also obtaining for every school the year-end bank reconciliation, and there's auditing procedures on their year-end numbers. This would just be the detailed testing, the actual receipts and disbursements, making sure teachers are receiving money every day, and the disbursements are all signed and appropriate. So.
And I think it's safe to assume we would know before now if you had noticed an irregularity at any one of those schools.
That's right. We actually provide a list of, for lack of a better word, exceptions. We're going to find where, Teacher Harris didn't get to the office in time, and that'll be noted. It is not a material or significant deficiencies, but we provide all those comments to Shauna and to your individual school auditors so that they can provide those back to those schools and use those in training sessions as far as, noting, all right, we saw an uptick in late deposits, or we noted we noted a Papa John's receipt that didn't have a receipt attached, things like that. Those are all tallied and provided to management. But again, nothing to cause concern at even a management level. So much less an audit report or a board level. So all clean there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to policies for review.
Good evening, members of the board. We have one policy for review tonight. It went to the policy committee at the last meeting. And if you have any questions, I'm available to answer them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and closed session decisions, we didn't, none tonight. Okay, board comments.
I have a comment. One of the things that was in our packet for FYI was the restart programs that I think the curriculum committee looked at. I have just a question. There's a lot of information in them about the type of programs and stuff that they think are being effective at each of the schools. What do we do for best practices in comparable schools? Do we take a look at what's working at each of the schools and then make those same changes at comparable schools. It seemed like all the schools were doing different things. And I'm just wondering where best practices come in and to see what's effective, how do we identify that it's effective, and how do we make it so if there's one elementary school that's finding a program is working well in their restart, are we sharing that with another restart school to say, look, this is work. I don't know how we determine if it's working, but how do we do that? I'm all about best practices.
That's a great question, and absolutely. We look at the data and let the data drive, and for the most part, these reports and programs weren't done in isolation. Principals did discuss what they wanted to do based on what their needs were. Of course, not every school is the same, and it's very difficult to take a practice and then pick that up and put that in the school just because the resources may be different. One X school may have this many teachers that teach this grade level, and so it's not as movable from one, but definitely this is an idea. How can you tweak that from school A to school B to make that work? Because we are seeing results. Look at the tutoring program that we're doing in math, and we are seeing if it's consistently implemented in the structure that we are seeing those results. We ask that other schools that want to do that tutoring do the same model and not deviate from that model. So we are tracking those. We are tracking the best practices. We have constant communication with schools, with superintendent. He calls in these schools on a regular basis to how are things going? What are you seeing? What does your data look like? And they present to the superintendent and of course, other cabinet staff as well as school performance. And so that we can track that and take those to other schools and say, this is working. What do you think? And for the most part, it works. I mean, we are, as a district, obviously we see our gains each year and trying to do that. So each year we try and build on it.
Is that not a key responsibility of our performance officers as well to coordinate that amongst best practices?
It is. And because they meet individually with principals on an ongoing basis as well. And so I can say, hey, at this school, I know that this principal has implemented this, and I'm seeing the same trends here in your data. Why don't you reach out to them and find out what they're doing? But that's a great question. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if there aren't any other comments, any announcements? I will start by saying the policy committee will meet on January 22nd here at the PDC at 9 a.m.
Excuse me, the Strategic Planning, Information Technology, and Transportation Committee will meet January 22nd at 7:30 here at the PDC.
The Facilities Committee will meet on January 23rd at 9 a.m. at the PDC. And the Finance Committee will meet on January 28th at the PDC at 8:15 a.m.
And curriculum, if there is an agenda, a full agenda, we'll be meeting on the 30th, 9 a.m. in this very room.
Okay, any other announcements? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Thank you.